Yeah, that is the $1 million question, $1 billion question probably. And as the railroad commissioner, you don't really have much authority over property taxes, and it's more kind of a legislative deal. I think valuation of homes and then in the kind of the way property taxes are assessed. Again, this is not my area of expertise on the property tax issue, and I heard Dan Patrick talk about the property tax issue this weekend actually, and I thought he had a decent idea. But not to let so he was basically saying, and I think this makes sense if you can figure out a way to do it. As the home values rise, the property taxes lower. So it's almost, he explained it as like a seesaw. So when home values rise, property taxes lower, and it becomes based on inflation. But to be honest with you, I don't have a perfectly well thought out articulated solution to reduce property taxes.
Well, so to get taxes, typically there's property taxes, sales tax, or consumption tax. Or
consumption, look, I mean, again, this is outside of the purview of the Railroad Commission. I think consumption tax makes a lot of sense, just because it gives the individual, I mean, look, we're all one for individual responsibility, and it gives the individual the kind of the autonomy to decide where they're going to spend their money, and it's based on the activity of that individual. If you don't want to spend your money, then you're not paying as much taxes.
So value-added tax, VAT, like they have in Europe, that's a consumption tax. Do you like that?
No, I'm not a big fan of value-added tax.
Okay. All right. How do you view your skills and how they complement or supplement the skills of the other two commissioners?
Yeah.
How would they supplement yours?
I think that's a great question. I wish more people would ask it actually, because I think between the current commissioners, David Porter, Christy Craddock, and myself, we would fit together and complement each other very well. We're just very different, I think. David Porter I'm not sure how much you guys know about the two current commissioners. David Porter is an accountant, a CPA, and is very, very smart guy, but very kind of, used to nose in the book and to let's figure out the details of what's going on here. And great guy, really neat guy, and did a great job winning his race, but probably not the most outgoing politician you'll ever meet. Great guy though. Christy Craddock is, again, somebody who's just very different, who has great relationships in the legislature. Her dad is a former Speaker of the House, and she grew up around the process, and so she adds a lot of value in really working with the legislature on issues facing the Railroad Commission, whether it's agency specific, whether it's revenue specific. She knows what she's doing there. Neither one of them has spent a lot of time actually running, at least to my knowledge, actually running a business in the industry. And so having that experience, understanding the impact regulation has on our decisions to create jobs or to invest in something or to drill somewhere is very important. And to see the impact regulation across the country has and how it varies, I think adds a lot of value in making these regulatory decisions. Being a former regulatory attorney and having the experience of fighting the federal government, fighting the EPA, working within that regulatory environment to push back and to fight for industry, fight for Texas jobs is not something that they've done, and I think I can add a lot of value there. So I think they fit together really well. I think we are similar in our ideology, as far as I can tell, as many conversations as I've had with them. We all are fiscal conservatives and understand the importance of this industry to Texas, but ultimately understand that our responsibility is to Texas. So I think our interests are aligned and our skill sets complement each other pretty well.
Is Christy, is she an engineer or attorney?
She's an attorney by trade. I'm not entirely sure what her kind of legal background is and like where she spent her time.
Okay.
But I know I'm fairly confident it was not in the same way mine was.
Okay.
Back to these toxic wells. I mean, when some business wants to dump their stuff in a well, I mean that seems like a pretty, other than the business that wants to do it, they don't have to drive 1,000 miles to West Texas in the middle of nowhere and get one. But everybody in the community is not gonna want one because they're afraid it's gonna,
Yeah.
contaminate their, so they go to the railroad commission to get a permit?
So, it's interesting you use the term toxic well. So I know that's something that's been a pretty big issue in Montgomery County,
Right.
toxic wells.
Right.
And that's a little different than the saltwater disposal wells that the Railroad Commission deals with. Saltwater disposal wells, these injection wells, disposal wells, whatever you want to call them, deal with flowback produced water. So it's got a high level of salinity, and it's really salty, and so that's kind of what, and it contains some of these frac fluids. The toxic wells, from my understanding, and I've done some reading on that, isn't something that falls directly under the Railroad Commission. It's more of the TCEQ, and I
Okay.
believe that's kind of more like chemicals that a lot of these chemical companies, maybe in the coast or whatever it may be, have this waste that's not necessarily from the water, which is high salt from the land, or has some trace of oil, has some trace of gas, whatever it might be. It's just very different. I think they go primarily to the TCEQ
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
Okay. What are we doing time-wise?
Go ahead, one more, and I'll yield to you.
No questions. Ken? Either one
I
of you
think we're
guys?
probably good.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we wrap it?
Good. Well, look, I won't even take 5 minutes. I think look, I really appreciate this opportunity, and I really value just the effort groups like you make, people like you make. I say all the time, when I travel around the state, you hear a lot about how people are frustrated with government and angry with government, but even in the midst of the frustration, even in the midst of the anger, I'm very optimistic about the future of this state specifically. Texas, as you guys know, is the greatest state and the greatest country in the world. And what gets me optimistic and what makes me excited about the future of this state specifically is people like you and groups like this who are engaged in the process and who are vetting candidates and trying to provide voters with information and so they can make informed decisions. Because you all understand that we all have an obligation to do everything we can to ensure that the Texas of tomorrow is actually better than the Texas of today. And that's why I'm running for Railroad Commissioner, to ensure that the future Texans have the opportunity to succeed. Like I said earlier, we are under attack, and it's not just campaign rhetoric. It's not just somebody something says to get elected to an office, but the reality, the Democrats and this administration specifically are trying to fundamentally change the fabric of this state. And they want to replace the Texas values with theirs. They want to replace values like hard work and strong faith and equal opportunity to succeed with equal opportunity to receive, if you will. And that's not Texas. That's not the United States of America. And again, I think it's important that if we're going to win the hearts and minds of rising generations and rising demographics, that we have a new generation of leaders who can effectively articulate a conservative message, who can effectively tell them about the Texas opportunity. And it's not just available to white guys running for office or old white guys, or no offense, none of you guys are old, but it's available to everybody, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of race, that it's colorblind and money blind. And we've got to be able to sell that message. To have somebody who has kind of lived the Texas dream, I think will go far in that. To have somebody who looks a little different, who's a little younger than what they perceive Republicans to be, I think will make a difference. But again, we don't need to change our message. Our message wins, and it's one that is deeply important to me, and it's why people like Kathy Adams and Peggy Venable and all these people have endorsed me, because I think they see that I don't have a record like some people. I don't have a voting record, but I have people like Kathy Adams and Peggy Venable and Kay Goolsby and all these folks to hold me accountable and to tell me, look, this isn't what you talked about, and you need to shape up or ship out. And I know you guys will work hard to ship me out if I don't shape up. So I think that's very important. And I just want to talk a little bit about my name. Well, first off, I think my background as a business owner in the industry, a regulatory attorney who's actually fought back the federal government, and somebody who's worked with now Justice Alito, fits extremely well on the Railroad Commission. And I think I can step in, especially having served as the lead of a Texas agency and done that successfully, step in day one and do the job. That's why 2 former railroad commissioners have endorsed me, and I'm expecting several more. It's why several, which we'll announce this week, in the next couple of weeks, several state reps and senators have endorsed me. They understand that I can do the job. But let me tell you a little bit about my name. You know, it's something, a question I get all the time. Malachi Boyles. It's not Dan Patrick or Ken Paxton, or it's a different name. And as you can imagine, having a name like Malachi growing up wasn't the easiest name in the world. People made fun of me every once in a while, and it's still to this day often mispronounced. But you know, as I got older, I really it's become a name that I'm extraordinarily proud of, and I really began to appreciate its meaning. Malachi is the last book in the Old Testament. It means my messenger, and that's really why I'm running for railroad commissioner, to be a messenger for our conservative principles, to be a messenger for energy independence and a stronger economy. But most importantly, I'm running to be a messenger for the future of Texas, for the next generation. So would love your support. Would love people to go to my website, malachifortexas.com. And I know you guys have a lot of influence, and I feel really good about where we are as a campaign. I think we've got a great shot at winning this thing, and with your help, I'll feel even better.
We appreciate your time.
Okay, we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you guys. I was even under 5 minutes.
There you
Get to
go.
go home early.
If you got a minute, you want to cut off the camera and we'll talk about that real quick on the campaign.
Good.